It's the Kink Consultant Podcast, where we're turning up the heat on all things kink and dating, relationships, and pop culture. So close the door, plug in your headphones, and let's get down to it. Guess what? March 20th to March 23rd in Las Vegas, I'm hosting a couples retreat. If you and your partner keep talking about building a dom-sub dynamic, but all you've done is consume content and argue about what it's supposed to look like, listen up. You need to stop theorizing and start actually building your dynamic based on what works for you two. Sure, you already know the basics, you've read the books, you've watched the videos. But what you don't have is clarity about roles, power, boundaries, or how to actually live this lifestyle without second-guessing yourselves. You're gonna leave knowing who leads, who surrenders, how power moves between you, and how to hold that dynamic with confidence in and out of the bedroom. This is personal coaching in a retreat environment. Spots are limited on purpose. So head to amandadames.com/couples retreat or the link in the show notes to book your spot now. I first came across Rena Martine a few years ago, former sex crimes prosecutor turned women's intimacy coach and author of The Sex You Want. She was on my radar, but it wasn't until I read her book that I knew I needed her on the podcast. Her lived experience doesn't just inform her work, it shapes it. And the way she helps women step into honesty, confidence, and their own power is genuinely impactful. It helped me, and I'm hoping it can help you. Before we get into it, quick note. This conversation touches on some taboo and potentially triggering topics, including dominant daddy, little girl dynamics, sexual assault, and BDSM more broadly. Feel free to skip this episode if any of that sounds like something you could do without hearing. Keep on kinking on. Hey everyone, and welcome to a special episode of The Kink Consultant because I am here in person with Rena Martine at her home. Thank you so much for having me. Rena is a former sex crimes prosecutor turned women's sex and intimacy coach, and I discovered her on Instagram years ago, and you were just... your job was cool. What you turned your whole life into is cool. Then I read your book and I was like, this is someone I need on the podcast. So I'm really excited to share Rena with you today. Rena, thank you so much.
I'm so excited you're here.
Well, there was a moment when I showed up and I had to fangirl a little bit because I read your book and I could not stop. Well, I audibled your book, which I have, side note, can I grab a book from the
shelf?
Yes, okay,
grab it.
Yeah, okay. The Sex You Want, you need to read this book. Okay, but I have a caveat. I am an Audible girl, so I just listened to it, and I really regretted not buying the actual physical copy. But this book really helped even settle things in my mind. The number one thing I walked away with from this book was the ability to appreciate and celebrate little things about myself that I would have minimized had I not thought about them through the lens of this book. So that's my quick blurb. I know we didn't even really get into that, but there are just things that, there's a part where you talk about writing down things to celebrate.
Yeah.
And that's only one
and
of many
brag
pieces.
About yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not there yet personally. I'm like, okay, let me celebrate little things. But there were examples that other women had given you in sessions with you. And it gave me permission to celebrate myself in ways that I'd be driving and I'd be like, wait, yeah, that was an amazing thing I did when I left my fiance and said, no, we're selling this house that I didn't know how I was going to recover from. To me, that was just like, oh, I just did it. But in reality, it's like, no, I did that.
Yes.
I made a choice and I made it happen. One of the most empowering books I read this year. So, yes.
I'm so glad.
Kink Consultant approved. You have to read this book. Okay, thank you. All right, now
Oh my gosh. Yes.
So,
thank you.
So excited to have this conversation. We spoke a little bit about what we could talk about. I mean, between sex crimes, prosecution, to what the work you're doing now, to living a kinky lifestyle and enjoying and embracing it. Can we start with your introduction into kink and where it started for you?
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure this is not a unique story that everyone's like, this thing turned me on and I didn't know why, right?
Yeah, I know.
But where did that start? So I noticed that like certain movies I would watch, I'm like, I'm really attracted to what's happening here. And obvious ones like Secretary, right?
Yeah.
But then like, I don't know if you've seen Belle de Jour.
I haven't, which I'm like so embarrassed to say. I know.
Oh
it's
my
on
goodness.
my list.
Oh my goodness. I watch it at least once a year. Like
Okay.
I watched it a few weeks ago, in fact. But seeing that, I'm like, we're taking someone, and I don't want to spoil it, but we're taking somebody whose life is really fantastic on paper, who's got it all, but is craving something so vastly different. where she's being humiliated and degraded, and like, what is the psychology there? And Buñuel, who made this movie, he was a contemporary of Dali, and so both of them went into the subconscious a lot, and as far as what's happening below the surface. And before we started recording today, I was saying that like sexual fantasies, just from an intellectual perspective, are so juicy to me, because I'm like, what's the need? And so once I started sitting with, okay, I am fantasizing not about being degraded, but like really being taken care of.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So was there a connection there of being degraded and being taken care of, and the enjoyment of the movie and that really sparking something?
Yeah, I think, well, so she turns into a prostitute in the movie.
Who among us have not done that?
No. But she's like a high society woman who's like, I just want to be a call girl. And she's married to this very successful, very good looking doctor who she doesn't want to sleep with. And she can't figure out why, but she wants to sleep with these strangers. And so I think what attracted me to the movie was this idea of, we have this hidden part of us that wants something so vastly different than who we are in our day-to-day lives. And for me at that time, being like badass bitch who takes care of stuff all the time in my profession, you know, like as a married woman, really as a prosecutor and a trial attorney, I'm hand-holding juries. Like that's a lot of what I'm doing when I'm interviewing survivors, when I'm hand-holding their families during the whole process. Like I'm doing a lot of caretaking for other people. And I just wanted someone to take care of me too.
Yeah. And you deserved that.
I did.
Also, I know this from your book, but I also feel real good girl energy from you. So,
oh yeah. Yep.
I was reminded of a part of the book where I was like, yeah, she is a good girl. Did any of that like need to explore come from just being a good girl that wanted to break free and like pull it out and play with it?
I think so. You know, interestingly, when I first got into kink, I was like, oh, spank me, right? Like, let's do the pain stuff. Tie me up. Do all this, do all that. And I was a bit more bratty. And over time, I found myself wanting to be really good and not wanting to be a brat anymore. Because I'm like, why fight? That takes energy. You know what I mean?
I know. New question.
Yeah.
Princess, good girl, or brat? Which one do you most relate to?
Oh, good girl.
Good girl.
1,000%.
Totally.
Yeah,
Okay.
no question.
All
no
right,
question.
love it.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm not only going to be a good girl, I'm going to be the best girl you've ever met.
Wait, that's that's
like
even like
overachieving good girl.
Type A personality. But I think from your career path and everything you've done, it does scream Type A.
Praise kink. Yeah, totally.
And then it's also a little bit competitive, the work you did, even though no one wants to think of what you were doing was very serious work. And you want to win because it matters and it's justice. But there's also like some being the best at that too is a life-changing
thing. And especially because like it's a yes or no. It's a guilty or, you know, a hung jury or not guilty. Like it's measurable and it has real life consequences. You know, on the one hand, when things work as they're supposed to, it was a really great job. But then when it didn't, it was devastating. And that was part of what burned me out from prosecuting sex crimes and eventually pivoting to other cases within the DA's office.
I mean, that's very intense for anyone, but especially I think if anyone has a lot of empathy, and the work you do now requires you to still hold people in their journey, like you described some of that earlier when we were chatting. And I mean, it's literally in the book throughout how you hold space for people and help them on their journey. So what was the pivotal moment for you of like, okay, I really am done here and I'm ready to take on something new?
Okay, so I had my like watershed moment when I decided I can't do sex crimes anymore. And that moment came when I had a jury do something really weird. Juries do weird things in sex cases, especially when the victim and the perpetrator are known to one another. If it's a stranger with a ski mask and we got like a DNA cold hit, they're like, great, this looks like exactly what I see on TV. This is clean. That's the boogeyman. Easy.
Yeah.
But when we start looking at, you know, what's most likely, which is it's a teacher, it's a step parent, it's a relative, right?
Someone they know.
Yeah.
Like,
juries will bend over backwards and do these mental gymnastics because they don't want to believe they live in a world where that happens, because they don't want to have to confront the reality that every time they leave their child with a family member or a teacher or a coach, right, that this thing could happen to them. So it's like, no, this must have been a misunderstanding. And so, these are strong cases too. And I was shocked. The judge was shocked. The public defender was shocked. And I talked to the jury foreperson afterwards because I was like, what happened back there?
Yeah.
They convicted him on one count, but then on the more serious stuff, they couldn't reach a verdict. So it was a mistrial. Our jury foreperson was a gay man. He ran a nonprofit for underserved, underrepresented youth. And I said, what happened back there? He's like, here's the thing. I work with these kids every day and these kids lie.
Oh my God.
And I understood that to mean these kids who are not white, poor kids is what you're saying to me, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that to a juror, in my business suit. But that's when I was like, this is broken. Yeah. And it wasn't necessarily the system. It wasn't well, the cops are broken and the judges are broken.
Yeah.
It was the jurors are broken. I'd like to think that in a post-Me Too world, things have changed, but this verdict happened the same week that Louis C.K.'s tour got canceled.
Oh, yeah.
It's okay, so let me get this straight.
Because Louis C.K., just for anyone who isn't familiar, it turned out was asking women if they would watch him masturbate.
Or if he could send a photo, I think. Yeah. It was it was not that there's a scale of minor to not minor, occurrences, but these were adults.
But there is a scale of power and understanding the power you hold by being a celebrity and then using that to coerce people into doing things they might not normally do if you weren't in power. So I just that's a little
right,
recap
the
of
context.
That. Yes.
But to see the reality of, okay, well, if you happen to be, and I'm using big ol' air quotes here, fortunate enough to be abused by somebody in power, all you have to do is make the accusation and you see real life consequences. This guy's tour got canceled. I have these two young girls who are, undocumented, who don't know each other, who are being abused by the same person. And no one cares. The system doesn't give a shit. Right? Yeah. And that's what upset me so much. And that's when I was like, I'm checking out of this.
That's so awful.
Yeah.
And now, you've really painted a picture that so much has just popped up in my head of wow, this is what you were facing every day. It becomes even more impressive that you then went into this line of work because that's a lot to carry and remember and just hear day in, day out.
Well, clearly I still have feelings about this.
I know.
I'm getting real riled up. But and I think now, is my job heavy working with clients still? Of course. I have a not insignificant number of people who come to me who are survivors because of my background. Not all of them, but many. But any day of the week, me feeling like I can give people hope and results. Because even when juries did the right thing, it doesn't mean that all of a sudden you're like, great, my sex life is better now.
Yeah.
We're not giving people the tools to heal. You might get some free therapy out of it, but therapy and coaching, I mean, I'm sure you know, they best work hand in hand when it comes to recovering from things. So, yeah.
So that's sort of that was your jump off moment. Okay, this is not working in sex crimes. I need to move.
I started prosecuting other cases within the DA's office. So I was in a unit that went after bad cops, for example, just doing other things. And the pandemic hit. But before that, I realized even though I'd burned out from doing sex crimes, I wasn't feeling like I was making a difference. My job became a job instead of a calling and my career. And I wanted to help people the way my therapist had helped me. And so I was actually considering going back to school to become a therapist and doing that part-time while still working at the DA's office, and then would continue to do that for another decade or so, get my pension, leave the DA's office, overachiever, all the things.
I know. I was like, I won't call her out on it again. But
yes, I know who I am. And that was my plan, and just ride it out. And then when the pandemic hit, I was like, we don't know how much time we have, and I don't want to wait 10 years to start doing the thing that I care about. And so I got certified to become a coach. I started working with clients, and I was like, if I can do this and keep a roof over my head, oh my God, what a dream. And it's been a really wonderful journey since then.
Well, thank you for walking us through that journey.
Yeah.
I'm just so glad you're keeping and sharing this knowledge with everyone and helping everyone on a daily basis with surviving and thriving after incidents. And the work, honestly, the work alone in the book, this book's for everyone, especially for self-confidence. One other thing, if I can fangirl it again.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. One of the things you taught me, and I know this on a level, but your example of it, of when you gave a TED Talk and someone went out of their way to say, well, you're only here because someone else invited you.
Yes.
And I would have, spit acid. I would have immediately stood up and said something cutting back because that is who I am. But the way you taught you talk about just having empathy for everyone and just understanding that they have their own life and world to protect. Yeah. And you don't personally come into it. So they're just trying to protect themselves. Yeah. It was such a good reminder for me. Like, I don't need to spit fire every time I feel attacked or perceive myself as being attacked.
Well, I did say, because she said that, I said, oh, I know. Yeah. That was my tone. But I was like, this woman is scared about probably losing her job because they brought some progressive in from a blue state to talk about sex on the stage. She's deeply religious. Like, yeah, she would not have picked me to come on this stage. And like, I'm only here because some guy from Chicago who had moved to this school in Florida was like, let's bring her in.
I was ready to start Googling people to be like, who said this to her?
No, it's all good.
I know you taught me that to find.
Calm down.
My
inner
empathy.
The best we can.
Yes. But just the empathy you bring to your work too is really great. Now, I think you are uniquely positioned then to talk about something that I don't talk about openly. I definitely don't talk about it on social media because of backlash and really not understanding how to talk about it, even though I have interacted and done some of this myself. DDLG, dominant daddy, little girl. Any type of age play talk gets extremely demonized on social media in real life. People cannot see past the, oh, you're saying little girl, that person must be into little girls. Has that ever come up for you in the work you've done, either as a coach, as a prosecutor? Like, does anyone ever say these things to you and say, like, this is disgusting, how can you handle it? These are the things I'm hearing, and I'm like,
oh my God, we can talk about this for like 10 hours. Okay, so I'll preface this by saying, yes, I spent a decade of my career working with survivors of sexual trauma, many of whom were children. I probably spent thousands of hours one-on-one or, with a detective there, like with kids and hearing the most horrific things that have happened. I am a survivor myself, okay? So I'm coming at this with the absolute highest level of compassion and empathy that I can have for actual survivors of abuse and assault. I will also say that the most shame that I see around people who fantasize about being small in this role is from survivors themselves who are like, wow, there must be something really wrong with me and really broken with me that I am fantasizing about a recreation of something that in some universe is similar to what happened to me. And once you understand like how our brains work and how we try to work through trauma, it actually makes complete sense why one would. I'll share an anecdote, and this is hopefully, trigger warning, all the things right now. Yeah. But one of the only sex crimes cases that I saw with a female defendant when I was a DA, and it was actually not my case, it was a colleague of mine, was a woman who was in possession of child pornography. And, they can track these things online. They trace it to her computer and they're like, you have, thousands of images of child pornography. Like, you're not our typical suspect here. And it wasn't like she was getting it for a man or anything. Yeah. This was for her. And I remember seeing her on the stand and I was like, what is this? And I went through and I looked at the police reports and she had told the police, like, this is what I watched to masturbate because I'm a survivor myself. I mean, this is before I got into Kink. This was when I was still a DA. But I remember that, like, that will stay with me for so long because she was using this as a form of healing. Granted, still a crime. I'm not condoning this, right? So if we can, like, take a step back, though, and understand why would a survivor want to do this? I think that's an interesting entry point because, look, if you're already recoiling, listening to this, and you're like, but save the survivors, help the survivors, protect the survivors. Well, let's look at why a survivor would actually want this. Because it's very common. So when it comes to healing through trauma, what our brain will attempt to do sometimes is restage the trauma, which I talk about in my book. This idea that we are getting to do this over again. We're removing the X factor that made this that made this dangerous in the first place. So we are like, okay, well, I know when this happened to me before, I didn't have agency. I wasn't in the director's chair. And now this time I get to send a message to my brain that says like, hey, I am, and I have control and I have choice. And so in many ways, our brain is always designed to keep us safe and to keep us alive. And so if you are yearning for something, it could very well be that your brain is trying to help you work through this trauma in the only way it understands, or the best way it understands how. But if you are carrying around this shame, like, oh my God, what is wrong with me that I crave this thing? That's not making matters worse. And if you're living in a society that's shaming you for something that you really have no control over,
it's only going to make the problem, like, it's going to make it so much harder to feel seen, or like you can even seek out what you're looking for with that shame.
Yeah. So, okay, let's go into like the stuff that people really don't want to talk about.
Yeah, let's do it. Which is, well, one of the things though that comes to mind, the first thing for me is, well, that makes sense for the victims and survivors. The survivors who want a repetition with agency, they want to be able to be in charge of it. But what about the daddy doms who want it?
And I think that what we need to look at is, what are we talking about here, right? Like, if we're talking about daddy dom, what does that mean? Because if we look at mainstream sexualized media, like, we've got bigger issues here in terms of like what we reward and what we consider to be sexy, just generally speaking. But if we look past the, okay, I want to pretend to be younger or more innocent, and we try to look at what the emotional need there is, we can also say, all right, daddy, what's your emotional need? What are you getting from this? And because I'm curious and I love finding out what the benefit is for people, like, I ask these questions. And sometimes it's like, I want to make you happy. Like, I want you to know you're safe. Yeah. And so it's really just molding to what the sub is looking for. But
it's the caretaking aspect for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Of like, I want to feel like I'm taking care of you.
I want to feel wanted and needed.
Yeah, feeling needed.
And adored, you know?
Yeah.
I have seen a real shift happen, and this is not according to any research or data. I would be very curious. Justin J. Lay Miller, if you are listening to this, please do some research on this stat. I would love to see if the data supports this, but anecdotally, I'm seeing a lot more women now who are looking for daddy versus looking for Christian Grey, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And I, of course, started theorizing, well, why is that? I saw some guy on Field said, like, I feel like I'm in an orphanage on here because all y'all are looking for daddies. And I was like, that is so good. And it's true. And a lot of people who were never necessarily into that before, and they used to be like, tie me up and spank me, or like, daddy, daddy, daddy. I just want to be called a good girl. And I think it's because of the world we're living in right now. Men are fucking scary. Our rights are being taken away. If anything, having an opportunity to be reminded by someone like, oh my God, there are safe men out there who want to take care of me.
Yes.
Has become more important than ever.
Hey, Kinksters. As a certified relationship coach, so many of my clients have been telling me they're struggling with dryness. They are just as excited and turned on as they used to be, but their body isn't keeping up. And they're not alone. I get it too. Even when my mind is ready, my body needs a little extra support, and it can kind of kill the mood. So I started looking into my options. Yes, I always have lube in my drawer, but I wanted to be more lubricated on my own. I wanted my body to match how it was feeling. That's why I found Playground Miracle Melts, a hyaluronic acid suppository for your vagina. I was already using hyaluronic acid in my body wash and face serum, so why wouldn't I add this to my routine? They're clinically tested, recommended by doctors, and hormone-free, which made them an easy yes. And the more I talked about it, the more I realized dryness is way more common than people admit. So if you've been dealing with dryness, you have to give these a try. Check my link in bio to shop Playground today. I agree with you. I do see this so much more. I also just wonder if there is this trope that powerful men are submissive, right? And I'm wondering if it's like a trope of powerful people are submissive. And women carry so much more now than they may have 40 years ago. Not in terms of workload. Yes. Workload's the same. Sure. But it might be higher now because people are working outside of the home and coming home and handling a lot of the mental load and labor at home too. Just being able to relax and say, please.
Yes. Somebody else make the decisions.
Yes.
And that, I think, in terms of why powerful women crave submission, absolutely. 50 Shades came out, #1 selling book of the last decade.
Yeah.
It stirred something because women are like, yeah, I want to be told what to eat for dinner, kind of thing, right? And it's interesting because I did like kind of what you just said. Like, here's my theory on why so many women are choosing submission. This was a few years ago, and I went viral on TikTok because of that, and then people just wanted me to dissect all these other sexual fantasies. Yeah. And I talked about DDLG, and people in the comments went absolutely ballistic, as you can imagine. And I don't go on TikTok anymore because I think it's a strange place. I don't like engaging with the commentary there, and if I don't like engaging with them, then why am I there, right? Yeah. And so that's my own stuff. We don't need to talk about it. But the type of submission, though, that I'm seeing women want under that category has shifted. And it's like, no, I don't want to be tied up and spanked. I just want to be told I'm good. I want the forehead kisses. Yeah. I want a daddy, right? Like, I
want my effort to be seen and appreciated. Yeah.
And not everyone's doing this. I'm overgeneralizing, but I'm seeing this shift happening.
Yeah.
In real time. And I think it's because this whole idea of like, I'm this powerful woman and I'm choosing to be subjugated. It's one of those make Handmaid's Tale fiction again. Like, this is the 2025 world we're living in, where like, in many ways we are losing our power and we want to feel safe and taken care of. And for a lot of us, childhood might not have been that place.
I think that's a safe assumption for a lot of people. But yeah, everything you're saying and just all of the examples you're pulling in, it really is like, yes, just hold me in a safe, warm place.
Yeah.
Where I don't have to worry about the big girl things of life.
Totally.
And my bodily autonomy and things that like at a different time I didn't have to worry about.
Yeah.
And now is very much on my mind.
And, you know, if we're talking age play, which is its own category, right? Yeah. And I'm sure I'm guessing that's maybe something you've talked about before. And
we had someone she specializes in age play, and oh my gosh, I wish I could remember her name right now on social media, but she wrote a book on how to be a little. So yes, she went into like really the little mentality, but we didn't even really talk about DDLG because we talked so much about age play itself, which is quite different.
And that is not my area of expertise. Yeah. And when I'm talking about good girl, it's less age.
This is what I want to get into because I think it's a really hard distinction to make for people because they hear DDLG isn't age play. Like, I am my age, but I still want to color. And I like coloring anyway. But, like, I want to be told I'm good and I did a good job and that I'm making my daddy happy. Yeah.
So I prefer to call it innocence play versus age play because to me, I'm saying this as somebody who engages in this myself. Yeah. I don't go back and have this age in mind like many littles do, where it's like, what is my little age? Is it 3? Is it 10? Right?
Yeah. Which is something that happens. Some people who are into age play, just as a little bit of background, will have an age where they're like, I'm into age play, or I'm a little, and they might be like 3 to 9, or they're a middle, meaning that they want to go into those preteen to teen years of like 11 to 16, and they're a middle at that, and then so there's layers to it, but you're saying you don't engage in any of that. That is not where your mind goes.
I don't talk about, like, I've never talked about age in that way. I will do, let's pretend a world that I am a version of Rena who's never done sex before, right?
Yeah.
That is fake. That is an absolute bullshit imaginary world, right?
I've read the book. I
know.
Like,
page 1, I'm about to pay for sex. But gosh, isn't it fun to fantasize learning about your body for the first time over again? Especially when many of us, like, my first sexual experience was not awesome. Like, and I'm not even talking about, like, unconsensual stuff. I'm like, you know, the first person I had PIV with, like, oh, it hurt. Like, none of us knew what we were doing. Like,
no, especially if you lost it to someone who was, like, it was both your first. Yeah, it's a hot mess.
Right. Like, for me, there's something really beautiful actually to be able to pretend like I get to do this again with somebody who I know is experienced, right?
Yeah.
Or like I'm pretending knows everything and I know nothing.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's play, right? It's pretend, and I get to be now more so than ever as somebody who's like, my expertise is sex. I talk about sex all day. As a sex crimes prosecutor, I did that too. Now I do it in a different capacity. Isn't it fun for me to cosplay somebody who knows nothing about sex?
Yeah.
That's the opposite of who I am in my day-to-day life. And so, yes, there is the nurturing component to it too. But, like, of course, the thing that makes people very uncomfortable about this is when we start to talk about sex. And how do we marry sex with even pretending like you are younger in any way, shape, or form than your age, right?
It makes people really uncomfortable.
Really uncomfortable. And to me, it is about deeply wanting to feel taken care of in my relationship. And you can have that and want that without any kind of kink component.
Yeah.
I think that's normal.
I actually think the fact that wanting that and that being normal is what is making the daddy thing also skyrocket, because it's not always a sexual thing. Kink in general isn't even always a sexual thing. But just that feeling of safety is something. What you're describing is ultimately a role play.
It is. That's exactly what it is.
Because you're still going to, you know, put a big girl clothes on and go to work and do your thing, but in that moment you're being taken care of.
I mean, what is like babysitter porn? What is like,
oh yeah,
we do this kind of thing all the time. Look at how many costumes you can buy slutty versions of for Halloween that are like, you know, okay, slutty Rainbow Bright, slutty Sesame Street, like slutty, like we
so many
do
slutty
this.
Snow White movies that we watched up growing and idolizing the princess. It's like slutty princess.
Yeah, but it's like, and I'm not trying to shame that, but
no,
I'm
not
like,
at all.
We wouldn't bat an eye at like, I loved Snow White as a kid and I want to be the slutty version of her as a grown up. We wouldn't pathologize that.
We don't.
We don't.
It's actually society putting a pressure on us to pathologize and make something into, oh, it's wrong. And I think it's society.
We're making the wrong things weird these days. That's all I'm going to
say. Such a good point. We really are. I mean, I know this on a very logical level of what do you mean this is like taboo, weird, and you're not allowed to say this, but we're allowed to say and do all of these other horrible things. Yeah, we are doing that. That is sad.
And, you know, part of like my approach is I recognize I come from a place of privilege, not just as a white, able-bodied woman in the Western world, but as somebody who I used to have a real respectable job, Amanda. No, but it's like I'm operating from a place of privilege because I've seen the worst shit that pretty much any human can see by virtue of the job I used to have.
Yeah.
And I also know that I was well respected as somebody, you know, within just the community because of my job. And so I feel like if I can normalize these discussions around non-monogamy as somebody who is non-monogamous, around kink, around these things, I have the luxury and the privilege of saying, I know it's not going to ruin my career now. And I know most people don't have that.
Yeah.
The fact that I can be a voice to talk about these kind of more taboo fantasies because of my background, of course, I'm going to be the one to talk about them because then no one talks about them. Like no one will touch this stuff in the literature. No one's talking about it.
No one is. And people are really uncomfortable for the exact same reason of what you described on what happened to you on TikTok.
Yeah.
And you're a professional talking about it, and they still came.
And I'm sure they're going to come at me on your show, too.
But if we can't even have the conversation about it, then there's no way to progress in it, because people will continue to live in their, this is how I feel and think about this, I'm not changing my mind. So that's
a lot of people are thinking about it and wanting it, and we need to have a conversation about it. But, you know, in the same way that infidelity rates are going up and no one wants to have a conversation about non-monogamy because it's very scary and it's very threatening for people.
Oh, that could be a 10-hour conversation on my part. And while I'm monogamous, I have to get on my soapbox about this one because it's almost like the shame only comes into it when you're open about it, which is mind-boggling to me. If you want to hide it and have an affair for 10 years, apparently that's fine. But the moment you embrace it, how dare you? You should be doing it and be shamed about it. And that.
Oh, yeah. The people who judge me the harshest are people who I know have committed acts of infidelity.
It is the craziest thing to me. I know. Yeah.
It's interesting, and not to go like too far off course here, but I think
can though.
I feel like I've had to, in many ways, come out again. Everyone in my life knows I'm non-monogamous. Like I scream about it from the rooftops. And like at the time I wrote my book, I had somebody who was my anchor partner, right? And then I kind of had like relationships orbiting around that, and people understood that. Like at least got that to some extent. Maybe it took some time for like my monogamous friends, but like they could kind of wrap their heads around that.
Yeah.
But now I'm in a different space where my anchor partner is married, right? To somebody. Yeah. They're ethically non-monogamous. And people I know are like losing their minds because they cannot understand how this works for me, how it works for him, how it works for his wife. They're just like, nope. That is something about this I do not like, and it's coming out in different ways, and it's been such an interesting glimpse into like no one's making this weird except you
people not involved actually in the entire situation.
Well, and it can be this beautiful like entry point into what is the fear that this is mirroring in you. Like what is your fear that you're now projecting onto me by virtue of how uncomfortable this makes you?
Have you gotten an answer to that? Because even I, as empathetic and I do this work, I don't always know what people are fearing.
I think broadly speaking, it's kind of what I was saying earlier about juries. This is a whole soapbox, but people don't like to be confronted with something that destabilizes their sense of safety in the world. And if you have to worry that your partner, who is your sense of safety in the world, is going to find out that there's another way of doing things that isn't always going to end up in a train wreck, that they're seeing healthy models of non-monogamy or polyamory, then it's like, what if they're going to start wanting that, right?
Yeah.
I'm not chosen anymore. This is scary for people. It undermines their daily sense of safety and security.
That is what the fear is for so many people. And I think understanding that that is your fear and that's what you're projecting when these people who are bringing their fear to you, it might help open the door to help them understand, like, being chosen is possibly part of their own fantasy that they don't recognize is a fantasy.
And the thing is, like, I have been chosen in the past in monogamy land. I've been chosen many times, and it led me to feel like I was in a prison. I don't want to be somebody's be all end all. Like, it is so suffocating to me, and that is how I'm wired. I'm not wired for monogamy. You know, I think most people are actually wired for non-monogamy and choose monogamy for different reasons. That's a whole other thing. But, like, I know this about myself, and it's like, I've been getting this messaging recently, kind of akin to you just haven't met the right guy yet.
Oh,
like, what, you know, like
yes.
the bisexual, actually, like, invisibility.
But also, that sounds so much like, that's why you don't want kids. You just haven't met the right person right now. I'm speaking
Right.
I'm not like, you don't want kids because of this, but it's that's the message. You're told anytime you're living outside of what I guess is considered the norm and it's challenging the status quo, it's because you haven't achieved the goal society has set. And once you do, then you'll want normal things.
Yeah. And I would sometimes get that with my former partner, like, well, you guys, this is just a phase, and then you guys will, you know, you'll close up. And I'm like, we started off non-monogamous. Like, this is like from the beginning. Or like this idea of like, oh, well, you know, gosh, if you fall in love with somebody who's married, aren't you going to want them to pick you and leave? I'm like, you're not understanding this. You know? And for me, it's because you operate in like your frame of the world, and that's your version of the world. And I'm not forcing mine on you, but like, you wouldn't say, or I would hope in this day and age, you wouldn't say to somebody who's bisexual, you just haven't met the right guy yet.
I wouldn't put it past anyone to not say anything, so I'm just like, well, yeah, you wouldn't, but you shouldn't.
Or when people say, I could never do that, I'm like, oh, if you meet someone who's gay, do you normally respond with, well, I could never suck dick, but like that you do you, boo? Like,
once again,
so
no, I don't know.
I think that like, all right, I'm from Los Angeles, but like this, like,
I agree with you.
No
I'm
one
just like,
said anything about you. Why are you making this about you?
Yes.
It's really offensive. Stop saying this to poly people. If you're listening to this, just stop saying that.
I know. It's one time people, in a weird way, decenter themselves to put you on display to be like, well, I could never do what you're doing. It's sort of like, okay,
cool,
that's
more
fine.
for me then.
Yeah. Thanks for letting me know. That's another thing that I often think about of like, we just talked cheating and how people want everyone to assimilate and just appear monogamous, but really it's bringing in so much judgment. I'm like, when is this judgment going to end? When are we really going to be more okay with it? And I wonder if we're ever going to get through to the other side.
Well, and it's naming the thing, and naming it is scary. And I think this circles back to DDLG. We don't want to name the thing. And when we start to name it and talk about the contours of it, as we're doing right now, oh, that's really scary for people. But yet we can sell like the slutty Snow White costumes on Amazon, like 12 different iterations of it, and no one bats an eye at it.
Yeah. Once again, because society has constructed it in a way where they broadly tell you, we'll accept this and we'll put it in Halloween stores as opposed to... I really do think there's something to what society says is acceptable, and then it kind of moves the window on what we're all accepting. They feel close to being in the window of what's accepted, but so far at the same time. And I'm wondering, as a poly woman who is kinky, do you find, not that it's a competition, one is more widely accepted than the other?
Oh, kink for sure.
So
absolutely.
Yeah, so poly is the area where the friends in your life will accept the fact that you're kinky because that can happen in a monogamous relationship between two people. But God forbid you enjoy one type of relationship with one person and not from another.
They can't understand. And I think part of that is capitalism, right? Like, I think that capitalism and patriarchy are normally like the woes.
And that's society is made up of that right now. Because feminism is now a bad word too. Like, I don't even know.
All of it. I can't keep track anymore. But I think with kink, I'm sorry, again, like 50 Shades, like, that's just become household name at this point. Like, kink is not kinky anymore. Kink is not it's not transgressive anymore, I should say. Like, there's certain things that I think are always still going to be viewed outside the norm. Like, I think if we start talking chastity,
yeah,
I think if we start talking male submission, that still makes people really uncomfortable. But female submission, that's like mainstream at this point. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry. Like,
because it falls into the patriarchal ideal of, oh, the man is in charge, the woman will submit. But yes, you are 100% correct. There are so many comments like, well, I just don't understand that. That's gross. I mean, we haven't even talked about things that are even not accepted in the kink world, like diaper play, even if it's just wearing a diaper.
Right.
It is not accepted, yeah. So there are levels to it. But that makes a lot of sense about poly, that I also don't think mainstream media, I mean, when you think about even what's on TV, 15 or 20 years ago, I guess Modern Family came out. And that's the first time that showed a real blended family of people coming in from different places. What shows right now have a fair representation of what a polyamorous relationship is like?
None.
I can't think of any, but I'm not.
No, I think we touched a little in Dying for Sex, little bit. You know, I'm most excited that we're actually seeing representation of bisexual people. That's very exciting to me. Okay, I'm not going to go off on that tangent, but Dying for Sex, I think we touched on it a little bit. And I think Hacks, the most recent season of Hacks with Hannah Einbender, she ends up being like a third to a couple.
Yes, actually, that's...
And they end up, what I loved about it is that, like, she ends up being the toxic one and not them. Like,
yes.
Because
and she actually is the toxic one, but yes.
Like, they break up with her because they're like, this is not working. And she's like, oh, like, and she's projecting this level of, like, emotional unavailability onto them because she's coming from monogamy land. Yeah. So that made me happy because I think we were doing double duty. We were actually not making the poly folks the weirdos, and we were showing that bisexuality is a valid orientation because bisexual erasure is very common in mainstream media.
It really is. I love those two examples. They are really good.
We are not seeing good mainstream representations. Couple to Throuple was a disaster of a train wreck.
I didn't even watch it because I never think reality TV is...
But we only want to see the train wrecks because it's a hell of a lot easier if you're sitting on your cozy sofa with your partner to be like, see, that's why we don't do that.
Yeah.
Versus like, oh, they look happy. That looks healthy.
Which is why I love bringing people on who have positive stories. And also there's a podcast. I recently had someone else on the podcast. She's strictly anonymous, where she literally brings on people who are having good, positive experiences where relationships don't fall apart but thrive when they move into poly.
Yeah.
And it's anonymous because people are sharing their entire lives, understandably.
Yeah.
But these things aren't all scary. Everyone loves to point, like, how many successful poly couples do you know? And
how many successful monogamous couples
exactly.
do you know?
There's like, I know plenty of successful couples on all sides. There's no, like, one bad or good, virtuous area where things are magical, ever. So I just like hearing positive stories. And the media, if anyone here writes... We need more of these stories out there because I think once people visualize it, I think that's what happened with 50 Shades of Grey. It's like, once you normalize it by seeing, oh, this can work, people need a picture painted for them sometimes. Yeah. And I think that that's a lot of what you're facing is people are being like, well, how does this work? And it's probably especially hard. They thought, oh, in your last relationship, you guys will become serious, get married, and close things off. And now you're part of a polyamorous relationship with someone who is married.
Yeah.
Which immediately then quells this idea that, oh, you'll close off.
It's funny, like, someone asked me what I was doing for Thanksgiving, and I was like, oh, I'm spending it with my partner, his wife, and their teenage daughter. And the response was like, this needs to be in your memoir. And I'm like, it's funny because it's like, it's not that salacious. It was actually a very wholesome, lovely day that we had. I'm like, so this leads me to my next point, which is if we had healthy depictions of polyamory on TV, they'd probably be kind of boring.
Yeah.
Because they're not very dramatic. Like,
just like healthy kink is actually quite boring 90% of the time. And then 10%, the part that actually involves sex, is probably the interesting part. But that's not 100% of your life.
No.
Yeah. Polyamorous is just polyamorous relationships. There are multiple relationships.
Yeah.
They're put on a weird pedestal sometimes.
Well, because, it's like, oh, no, this is going to turn into Real Housewives. I'm like, no, like, that's actually... I don't know if you've seen the meme, like, what people think polyamory is.
Yes.
Like, the Garden of Earthly Delights, and what it actually is, and it's, like, Google Calendars. Yeah. Like, that's, like, the truth
I know,
of it.
and, like, a lot of game nights, too.
Yeah.
Right? So, for anyone who is interested in DLG, who might even be facing some of that internal shame, if you could give someone advice for, like, feeling guilt or shame about wanting this, what would you say to them?
Say curiosity is the antidote to judgment. So always getting curious, which is, okay, what is it about the thing that either turns me on or sounds appealing to me? And I'm sure you have, in your line of work, your own version of that question that you help clients with, right?
Yeah. Well, I always say lead with curiosity.
Yes. Yeah.
Because I think it opens the doors.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you were saying before we started recording, like, what is it that you want to feel?
Yeah. That's the core of my work, is getting to that. Because I think it helps people speak to other people about it.
Yeah.
And it really just forces you to talk about it a little bit more yourself and just face, well, what is it that I'm looking for? What am I trying to achieve here? As a good girl, what do you want to feel?
I definitely have a praise kink. So I like to be told I'm great. Like, when you're like, I'm fangirling on you, I'm like, please. Yeah. Like, I love this. But this goes back to, like, women, we are taught to minimize how good we are, right? We're taught not to boast, not to be boastful, not to be proud of ourselves, which is why in my book I'm like, brag about yourself all the time. Yeah. But I like to be told that I'm good because I've worked hard. I've worked really hard,
You're still working really hard. You're working really
hard.
Yes,
I've learned how to rest. That was a whole unlearning, but rest, people. Rest. You must rest.
By the way, though, in this moment, I just want to point out that even though you're resting, you're still working hard.
Oh, yeah.
You're just not working to the point of exhaustion, and you still deserve to be more than ever deserve to be rewarded then.
Yeah, it's like when they say, like, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life. Yeah. I'm like, I could talk about this all day. It's my favorite thing in the entire world, and then it doesn't feel like work.
Praise.
I like to feel praise. I really like to feel taken care of and safe. And listen, I've seen some of the worst parts of humanity. Mm-hmm. Like, truly, shit that I will not repeat ever to anyone. And it's really nice, especially to be around men and to know that I am safe. That's nice. I'm not gonna lie. It is nice to have somebody open a car door for me.
Yeah, I really like that too.
My daddy partner now, he orders for me at restaurants. I know 30 years ago, this would have been like, you're a liberated woman. How could you? I'm like, I know, it's because I'm a liberated woman and I don't need anyone ordering for me that I'm like, that's so sweet.
It is really sweet. Is that part of the dynamic you have with him?
Yeah, he started doing it and I gave positive reinforcement. I was like, I love that. And because he said to me, he's like, all I want to do is take care of you. It's been work for me to receive that because I want that too. Yeah. And I'm an overfunctioner, and I think a lot of women are, and I don't mean to make everything gendered, but like...
No, I think it's okay, and I think a lot of my listeners are aligned with, like, things being gendered at times. Yeah.
I mean, we see differences based on, in the research when it comes to sexual fantasies, women versus men, like, pretty clearly. So if our kinks were not sociological, we wouldn't see differences like that.
Yeah. It just reminds me of, I know plenty of women who identify as a daddy. Because it's that caretaker role more even than the mommy or the provider caretaker that you're describing. So it's sort of like, we might say gendered, but daddy doesn't always need to be a woman. Or a man, excuse me. Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and I think that's another thing. There's just so much openness in...
Daddy's a state of mind.
Yes.
And look...
Like, yes, it is.
Pedro Pascal, like when his character, and I don't think this will be a spoiler for anyone, if you watch The Last of Us, his character gets killed off, and I was like, that is just cruel, because right now America needs a zaddy.
Yes.
And he was our zaddy because he's like this comforting, safe, caretaking thing, and we all fucking love him for it.
I didn't watch the show and even I knew that. Yes. That's spoiler.
Okay.
Yes, yeah. But I didn't get to experience
But
his
the fact
character.
that he's like our sex symbol right now.
Yeah. Because he's perfect.
Yeah. And I was reading an article about this today. Like, it used to be the aloof, forever bachelor George Clooney was like the sex symbol. And now, why is it that we're all like, zaddy, zaddy, zaddy?
Someone emotionally stable and present and able to hold space for us as opposed to pushing us away.
And protect. Yeah. So... I'm just going to say the quiet part out loud because, like, on a massive scale, we're seeing this shift and we're all doing it, and no one wants to talk about the thing that we are all actually craving because it's scary, because there is a real version of this that is abusive. And in the same way that Dan Savage says that kink is just cops and robbers for grown-ups with their pants off, like, yeah, there are people who have actually been victims in an armed robbery in a bank, right? Like... Yes, but I think not seeing the nuance here is pushing more people into the closet and adding shame, especially for folks who themselves are survivors.
Yes.
I don't think it's healthy to assume that any person who indulges in somebody's good girl or little girl, whatever fantasy, is an abuser. in fact, I've had to do a lot of work to tell mostly men, like, this doesn't make you a bad person to do this. And the reason she's asking for this is actually because she is empowered and not because she's disempowered. And so it's typically the good guys who struggle the most with this. And there is a permission giving there. Any kind of dominant role, really, but you know, that's kind of your area of expertise, obviously.
But we do talk about it a lot. Once people understand that this is what they're interested in, do you have any advice for how to communicate it with a partner, or how to be able to balance out this space of this innocence play? Is that what
that's what I call it for me.
Did he meet you where you were at and you naturally fell into this, or was there some negotiating that you guys had to do to fine-tune the dynamic?
Because I'm Rena, date one, I was like, hey, so do you have any kinks? And like, I said what mine were. He talked about his experience or lack thereof with certain things and things that he gravitated towards. And I will say this as somebody who's been with folks who are really experienced or have a lot of experience with this, and people who are like, Rena, show me how. Like, there are people who are just born for this and who are naturals. And he is one of those people, which is great. I haven't had to do much like guiding at all, even though I have a lot of experience. So I think it was more like, here's what I like about this. I like being rewarded. I like carrot, not stick, right? Like, don't punish me, but offer me incentives and rewards, and like, I will always work for them. And so, yeah, I don't want to like tell someone how to dom me, but it's just like, here are the themes, here are the notes that I'm looking for. And I like to feel taken care of. And what are you looking to get out of this? And so like, me understanding what that dynamic brings to him understanding what it brings to me. And then he can kind of curate it from there. And then occasionally I will like push the envelope a little bit to be like, was that too much? Is that weird for you? He's like, and then he'll tell me yes or no.
Yeah.
And we don't know until we do it, because not from a bratty place, but like a...
No, of just like you're exploring the edges of whatever you're...
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
whatever you're exploring.
And I'm funny about it when I do it. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, this is like... Oh, but daddy, like, I don't even know what sex is. Like, I mean, this is what we're talking about here. Like,
everything you just said, though, was sort of a mic drop moment for me, because I work with a lot of women specifically who are like, well, I don't want to teach him. But what you're describing is he didn't show up to the dinner like, well, I'm a daddy and I want to be a caretaker dom type. No. You introduced your interests and he ran with them, and you let him figure out himself in it. And I think that's the best point is, or a point you made without making, is sometimes someone might not say they're kinky, they might not identify as a dom, but they're born for it, they just haven't tapped into it. And what you did was you said, this is how I want to feel. This is what I'm interested in. And allowed him to plug in and see where it fit.
Yeah.
And then the final thing you did was checked in with him to see how it works for him, if he's into it, what he's getting out of it. And I think the piece that's so important, see, I told you mic drop moment, I'm like, oh yes, exactly. The piece that's so important is letting someone express how they feel about it and what they're getting out of it. Because if they say, it's really not doing anything for me, then you know that probably you are going to end up doing a lot more teaching because they want to make you happy, but it's not doing it for them. And then you need to understand that, and you cannot continue to strive for the fantasy of, oh, he's going to do my perfect daddy dom. Because it's like, no, he might do it for you, but that's going to make it harder to be perfect.
Totally. And I don't want to do that with somebody unless they are really excited about it. I have a play partner in my life who is not into that at all. And so I will like use it as a way to razz him. I'm like, daddy, he's like, don't call me that. I fuck with him about it. And it's like, I'm like, wait, do you mean that I'm a good girl? And he's like, no, you're a grown woman. You're not a good girl. And so like, it becomes a joke, you know, right? Like, it's a playful thing. And I think understanding that there's levity here.
Yeah.
And the thing that we all don't want to talk about, which is actual abuse, like, that is serious.
Yeah.
That is not. And it exists in the world. It's an ugly part of the world that we cannot get rid of anytime soon.
Sad but true.
Right?
I mean, or maybe ever. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's...
I think that's what also makes it so scary, and scary to touch, think about, talk about, because we're so powerless in really stopping it at a large scale.
For sure. And again, we don't like talking about it, and we want to pretend like it just doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But if we're not talking about the thing, and we're not talking about the kink that a lot of people have, then we aren't giving people tools to do it safely. Right? We aren't giving people tools to assess, is this person predatory, or are they just like a responsible kinkster? We're not giving people tools if we're not talking about things.
And that is why I want to thank you for coming on to actually talking about it, because these are the tools and the permission. And I do sometimes think that people are in general, and that's why they listen to podcasts and read books of like, yes, it is okay. There is permission out there. I can give the permission to myself, even like learning that is super important.
And I'm sure you and I can both say permission granted.
Absolutely,
if you're looking for a permission slip, this is it.
This is it.
This is it.
But once again, I want to reiterate, you have to go buy a copy of the physical book. Now I have a copy of the physical book.
You can listen to it too, or the ebook.
Or the ebook would be perfect. That would have been the perfect like middle ground for me. The Sex You Want by Rena Martine. A shameless journey to deep intimacy, honest pleasure, and a life you love. I really felt that walking away from it. I felt a new appreciation for the life I've built for myself and not taking it for granted or just thinking, well, that's what you do. You rebuild.
Yeah.
Celebrate that you've rebuilt.
Yes.
To like hold that moment. Rena, thank you so much for your time and sharing stories. This was fantastic.
It was so great to meet you in person.
Likewise.
Yeah.